Welcome to With You Podcast. This is a very special episode. It's our 100th episode.
100. Yeah, we can't believe it's 100. So we're really glad you're here to join us for a really special episode. And that we kind of are reflecting that over the years, we didn't think we'd make it this long, sitting and talking to each other and to you. And so we're glad you're here, and we're really excited to celebrate this milestone.
We are, and today's episode is special. It was recorded live in the Czech Republic. It was with an audience of about 100 people, which is really cool because it was the 100th episode. And we sat down with three couples that are really dear to us that have done ministry in the Czech Republic for over 30, in Central and Eastern Europe for over 30 years. So we'll talk a little bit at the beginning about set up for that, but hang on because you will be encouraged.
Yeah, wait while we explain the context of why we're there. And in fact, we want you to know that when we often refer to our travels on this podcast, we often are somewhere else or we've just come back from somewhere else. Usually it's because of the people that were in this room that we've been traveling to see. So we really think you're going to be encouraged and maybe a little bit challenged by hearing.
And have some laughs.
And have some laughs too. Yeah, it's not all serious. It's really fun. We hope you'll enjoy the stories told by the couples who we think really show us some really good models of intentional Christian living and really strong friendship and a dedication to service and ministry.
Yeah. So before we begin, we just especially want to thank you for being with us, whether you've been with us from the beginning 3 years ago and 100 episodes ago, or you just started listening and watching us on YouTube. Thank you. This wouldn't be possible without you. So we are so thankful for your partnering with us and interacting with us around the topics that come up around relationships and life transitions.
I know. And I think when we say thank you, it sounds like we're going to be calling it quits, but we're not. No. We're going to be sticking around, but we are going to be taking a short break after this episode. Just a little respite as we work on a project. We're on a sabbatical semester.
Yeah. Do you see? We're someplace different.
Always. And we will have a lot to share with you about the book that we're writing together.
Yeah.
And that's why we need a little time off to focus. So please enjoy going back through not archived, but past episodes while we're gone for a few weeks, and join us when we return.
So now settle in, sit back and enjoy the 100th episode because it is live from the Czech Republic. Welcome to With You Podcast,
where we explore relationships and life transitions.
I'm David.
And I'm Tara.
And today we have a very special recording. It's our 100th recording.
Yeah, and we are doing this with a live audience. Everybody say hello. So it's our first time.
Wow, where'd you all come from? That's a lot of people to have in our basement.
Well, we're not in our basement.
Where are we?
We're recording from somewhere very different. We're in a mountainous area in the Czech Republic. So we're really lucky to be here with 100 of our new closest friends.
Yeah, and our Czech friends, how do you say the place we're located at? Malenovice.
Close enough.
All right. So that's where we are. And we're gathering here. Why are we here? For the 30th. Okay, good, perfect.
No open mic.
For the 30th anniversary of the European Summer Study Program.
Yeah, and so a lot of what we're going to do next is we'll explain what the European Summer Study Program is, and we are kind of the newest people to learn about this and to be invited to participate. So it's kind of funny that we're explaining it to you, but because we've been so affected by it, we thought this would be a great thing to introduce to our listeners.
The real question is, why are we here?
That's a good question.
Not on Earth, but at this conference. And so we're going to share how we feel very fortunate to be here. We've been invited to be part of something that's been happening for multiple decades, back to the 70s and 80s, and the relationships that you all have made with each other in the room, that you've made with our friends. is really powerful and has been extended to us. And so we're really thankful to be part of these relationships. So that's why we're eager to share with everybody that's listening more about your relationships and the impact that has on Central and Eastern Europe, on faith, on church communities. And we're excited to get into what the European Summer Program is.
Yeah, so we have been asking people, because we've had to learn ourselves what it is. It was founded to provide basically resources and rest to ministry leaders in post-communist Central and Eastern Europe.
And if anybody listening is under 30, we'll explain communism later. It might be coming back, so you might learn sooner than later. Nice. European Summer Study Program also has partnered with Wheaton College grad school for quite a long time and local leaders in country. And there have always been faculty, professor partners. So like the Kriegbaums and the Elmers and the Elwells and the Roots, they have come alongside and provided context, provided training, and provided emotional connection and support. And the program would be less rich without them.
Right. And so it's been 30 years. And in those 30 years, we understand there have been around 360 participants who've come through this program. And they have represented, and I asked for a number of countries, Kurt, and I don't remember what the number, how many countries have been represented? Let's just give a rough number. 15, around 15 countries have been represented through this program. And tonight we have representatives from a number of countries, not 15, but we'll name some of those countries because we've got a lot of people in here who've just been through a week of this reunion. We've got people from the Czech Republic. Yeah, there they are.
Bulgaria. There's my Bulgarians.
Hungary.
Romania. That does sound like Romania.
Croatia. Yeah.
Croatia's shy. Poland.
Poland. Yes. Slovakia. Yeah.
Slovenia. Hey, and for the longest time, it took us to figure out those are two different countries. And then the UK. Now, I'm pretty sure that's not in Central and Eastern Europe, but we have lovely colleagues from the UK here, so we're glad you're here. So we'd like to paint a picture of what it looks like for someone to come to the summer program.
Yeah, so first they apply for the program, and they've usually been recommended by somebody else who knows this team. And when they apply and get accepted into the program, they then arrive in the summer. It's 6 weeks in the summer, arriving and coming to Wheaton, Illinois.
And when we did kind of the group processing at the beginning of conference this weekend, we heard the most important thing at Wheaton, the cafeteria, that everybody loved to eat. So much so they put on these things that we just learned about called kilos.
Yeah, so on the campus at Wheaton, they have access to the library, to resources, to mentorship from some of the Wheaton professors and people in the community. Especially the Tillmans spend a lot of time with the participants in their backyard, having long conversations, taking them shopping, taking them to a good Midwestern 4th of July parade and fireworks experience, which is a good introduction to life in the U.S., but mostly just having access to time that they wouldn't have otherwise in their busy life to complete a project. Usually there's a dissertation or a study or what other projects are completed? Book.
Anything you can do using a library.
Yes.
Because that was the initial thing of resourcing, having resources, academic resources available at Wheaton, from the library to the professors to really accomplish those projects. We wanted to talk about how this started. So it's been amazing to be here to meet people from 1995 all the way to 2025 that have been through the program. And we wanted to talk about the beginning because it started with a professor at Wheaton that your dad knew really well.
Well, he was his track coach, which I just found out in recent times. But so the name Don Church, known as Bubba, is a name you'll hear anytime you talk to anybody about this summer study program. And he was a professor and a track coach at Wheaton College who was really passionate about having a bigger worldview and being of assistance to people outside our bubble.
And his focus was really relational. It wasn't just providing people experience going to Central and Eastern Europe, and it wasn't just providing resources to Central and Eastern Europe, but it was this back and forth, shared community, shared connection, learning from each other. And he did this in a very simple way, and it's remarkable because he asked 3 questions, and you probably all know these questions. How's your soul? He would ask, how's your soul?
Right, and it's a simple question, but how often does somebody ask you that? How's your soul doing? Not
until I met David Sveen, and he said, the Lord loves you, I have a plan for your life, and how's your soul? And I'm like, no, I don't know how it is. The second question that Don would ask is, what do you need? Is there anything that you need? And so he would see how you're doing, and then see what resources could he be aware of that was a need for people. And then the last was,
how can I help?
And he would do that by bridging, like, oh, I know someone here and I know someone here and I can bring them together. Or I can pray for you. Or I can ask others to see if they have access to that resource. He was a networker before that was even probably a thing.
Or apparently I can bring a wheelbarrow on a plane to you if you need it in Israel.
Yeah,
he was a resource bringer and a connector of people.
And his main connection to ESSP, to the summer program, started in the mid-90s.
So we're going to summarize this now the way it's been told to us. So if we get anything wrong, it can be corrected by the team that we'll be talking to soon after we kind of summarize how the program started and what happened. Don Church had already been traveling back and forth to Russia and to Europe. But you all know when communism was falling, things started to change, and there were no more opportunities now for people to go pursue degrees in theology. But there was a lack of resources.
And Don had been traveling, I mean, even at lunch today, talking to Jerry Root, going in the late 80s with sports teams and connecting even before the fall. And he was able to really make people comfortable and to be a resource for people. So he would travel, and Don had been to the region for quite a long time, and he realized his friends didn't have access to library, didn't have access to theological training, to the things that were needed to develop the church and society. And so he got thinking about how do we provide resources in these difficult times. And so in the summer of '94, he went to a place called Cambridge University, where Andrew Fellows, I'm looking for a shout out from Andrew Fellows. We have one person from Cambridge here. And so Don went to Cambridge, and in the summer of '94, he studied at a tutorial program at Cambridge and realized that we needed to create something similar at Wheaton for Christian leaders, and that it was not just for Western Europe, but that there was a need for his friends in Central and Eastern Europe for these resources.
So that's when it was born. From what we understand, people started working together to create this summer study program, and the first 6 participants came in the summer of 1995. We have someone here from that year, don't we? Yes, back there. Yeah. So
now, it is an audio medium. So do we have someone from 95? Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
So,
so that's the origin story, but there's obviously a lot of other people involved with this. And we've been so privileged to be invited into this, and we're still learning as we go and really admiring the model of this work that's being done.
So Don Church died and is in heaven now, and you know what we expected to happen would be the program would just die with him, and it didn't. The program is carrying on. So who's carrying on the work? A program that continues this long needs to have people that are willing to do the work, and it also needs to have a thread that runs through it. That is the centering of the organization and of the work that's being done. Doing the work, organizing, taking care of the logistics, making it happen. And they also have to have a shared vision for why this matters. And we are going to get to talk to those people today that are threads.
Right. And that's, I think for us, that's a really unique part of this story, is that the people who've been involved in this work together have been doing this together for so many years. And it's really unique to have shared lives, even shared business and lots of overlapping things and friendship for so many decades. And so we're going to tell that we're going to invite them to tell their stories. And we also want to acknowledge that this is the team that we know and that we're acquainted with, but there's so many other people who've been involved. We've got Kristen Kriegbaum here, who's also been part of it for many years with her husband, Ward, and Jerry and Claudia Root are in this room tonight too and have been doing this work for many years.
And if we wanted the podcast to last for about a week, we could cover all of those stories, especially Jerry's stories. And we only have a limited amount of time. So we are going to highlight stories from people that have had friendship, faith, and formation together for, I don't even know how many decades, and we'll ask them about that. But they're the hearts behind what we've been doing this weekend. And it's David and Kriste Sveen, Kurt and Meg Tillman, and Bill and Sandy Skowera.
Yeah, we're going to...
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So, right? I mean, we could keep on applauding them for a long time, but they would hate that. They would hate that. They would hate that. So they have been consistently showing up, and I love that term, showing up for each other and for all of us these many years. And we've all experienced it in different ways. And it's interesting that they're friends, business partners, ministry teammates. We all go to church together. And their story is unique and one that we want to focus on because of the relationship, because of navigating life transitions and how they've done it consistently throughout a long time. And so we've seen them love each other. We've seen them put up with each other, right? With Kurt. We've seen them laugh together. And we've seen them cry together. And in all of those situations, across the gamut, it's been together. And so we are excited to talk with them.
Yeah, and I just want to say, too, I think all of them are a little uncomfortable with coming up and being part of this, because another thing that's unique about them is they're running things in the background. They're doing a lot of work and not often up front. So we want this to be a comfortable time of telling their story, and we think it's a story that's really worth telling. So we also will introduce something that Bill told us about. We were asking Bill and Sandy before this event, kind of what is one of the things that's kept you all doing this together for so long? And he wanted everybody to know that's one thing that's unique about them is creating an intentional set of shared values together. And I think maybe we'll have them talk about those values.
Yeah, I think it's about time. We've talked enough. It's about time to have them come up, right? So let's welcome Bill, Kurt, and Dave.
Welcome, guys.
How excited are you to be here?
To be here with a microphone.
Not very.
So why don't you each introduce yourselves, just so if people are listening on audio, they know whose voice is who.
Yeah, I'm David Sveen.
Kurt Tillman.
And Bill Skowera.
So maybe you can each cover one of the four core values that kind of drives the consistency of everything that you do. So David, maybe we can start with you. Which core value is the first one?
So I'll let you, while you're thinking about who's going to start, what we were told is that the core of what you guys, and what we've witnessed too, we've really seen this playing out in all the things that you do. the core of what you do is to help others do what God has called them to do. And that's kind of why we're here. You guys called us to do what apparently God's got a purpose for.
And for some reason, we said yes. And you probably feel the same way, right? We asked you to do this, and for some reason, you said yes.
And that your approach is a commitment to working together, not to just creating a strategic plan and executing that. So under that vision, you have your core values, and maybe you can talk a little bit about what those are.
Yeah, so core values, by definition, are those things that are most important to you. And values are, in some ways, neutral. My values may be different than someone else's. Kurt and I, in the summer of 2000, and really for the next 6 months or so, would talk almost every day and almost every hour about what are our values? What are the things that are most important to us? And it wasn't something that we came to very quickly, because lots of things are important to us. Our families are important. Our faith is important. Our church is important. Our children, our history, our education, our work. There's so many things that we've considered very valuable. But that's not what we were looking for. What are the things what are the values that would determine how we would make decisions, how we would interact with each other? How do they define what our relationships would be like? And so we came up with these 4 values, and even here we are, this is 25 years later, we still live by these. And so they have been enduring. So I'll just go through the first one. Our first value was being Christ-centered. As you look at church history, it's interesting to me that oftentimes the divisions in the church are not whether Jesus is who he claims to be, but they're secondary issues. And for us, we would call it this, our tent was pretty big. If you're a person who is willing to follow Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, or Savior and Lord, we would want to work with you. So for us, that was pretty broad. We came from our denominational background is the Evangelical Covenant Church, part of the Free Church movement of the Scandinavians that came across in the early 1900s. And that's our frame of reference. And we believe that to be, for us, it kind of works. But that didn't mean we would exclude someone from outside that perspective. So from us, it's from being an evangelical to being a Catholic. We didn't care. If you were willing to follow Jesus as your Savior and Lord, we wanted to work with you.
Now, Kurt, one of the things that I love about you is you have great relational skills, and that's part of one of the core values. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Well, second core value is relationship.
Yeah. Weird, right? I mean, how is that?
And there are a lot of ways that term can be used, but many of the relationships in society are transactional relationships. And so there's some sort of a quid pro quo. And when we talk about relationship, it's real relationship of authenticity, of transparency, of long-term commitment, in particular of trying to stay away from the kind of power imbalance that exists, particularly if you're Americans working internationally. It just sort of comes with the territory. And so having an awareness of that, more than anything else we do relationship.
Yeah.
We do relationship before we do strategy. And the core of, and really relationship is both who we are as well as how we do what we do. And I think one of the things that has made our story unusual is our friendships go back a lifetime. And there was a sense of being called to do something together before there was an understanding of what it was that we were being called to do, which is pretty unusual. But something was percolating over the course of many years that was weaving our hearts, our families, our passions together. And that's relationship centered on Christ.
So when you talk about it being relational for a long time, how did y'all meet?
That's going to come later.
Oh, that's going to come later. So this is how it works with me and Tara. Yeah. Like, I am the family circus kid that just kind of wanders around, and she has a nice structure. What's the third core value, Bill?
So out of the, here we go. there are two others. One of them is that the way that we go about doing things is not to drive through the relationship programs and things. It's how do we serve?
Yeah.
And serving from our perspective is not trying to dictate what should be done, nor is it to direct, but it's to say, okay, this is the body of Christ. There are needs on this part of the world. We've got certain gifts. They have gifts that can help us. And how do you mutually work together? And so through the relationships that are deeply trusted, you find out what real needs are and not just surface needs. And then you figure out who can meet those needs. And we go back and forth that way. So it's mutual. It's not just us serving them or them serving us.
Do you want to do the fourth one as well?
Of course not.
Of course not. Who would you like to do the fourth one?
So the final and fourth one is we call it personal wholeness, but another way we would describe it is we want to live seamless lives. Again, if you look at any kind of literature of what destroys churches or destroys families, is this disconnect between what people say they believe and how they behave. And in fact, we carried this so far is that when the three of us started working together, the first thing we did is try to hire people that we knew, that we were seeing on Sunday morning, as a way of transparency and holding ourselves accountable to our own behavior. So in other words, we didn't want to be anything different on Monday than we were on Sunday. And in fact, we've done that now for 25 years. So we've had our children work with us. Whenever we have a job opening in our company, we go to our church family first, which no one does. People don't ever do that, but we do that. And from time to time, it's been a bit sticky, for sure. But nonetheless, this idea of wholeness or personal wholeness, or what we say seamless life, lining up what we say we believe to how we behave, was core to how it is that we were going to make our decisions going forward together.
Yeah. And I think that we've heard stories from people all week that speak into all four of these: the Christ-centered, the servant attitude, the relational depth and meaningful showing up, and that integrity and consistency in the 3+ decades that you have been living and working and serving together. And so maybe now we can go into.
Now it's time.
I love a backstory. Do you like Marvel comics or the Marvel movies? My favorites are the backstories, not so much the tension in the moment. And we love to hear your backstory of how you initially met. And it looks like Kurt will be up for this.
You have no idea what you just asked.
Well, you know what? We brought comfortable chairs for this purpose.
You know, why is it that we're sitting in the proletariat chair and you're sitting in the bourgeoisie chair?
Again, this is partly how we're explaining communism.
So actually, I think the longest relationship, you mentioned 3 couples, and I think the relationship that goes back the furthest is Sandy Skowera and I, who met when we were 1 year old.
Now, how exactly does that happen? Were you just kind of crawling along the Sunday school?
We were raised in the same church. We had both been in the same church all of our lives. Now we're all in the same church. Our mothers were close friends and worked together. But actually, probably the second oldest relationship is Meg and Kriste. And they've known each other since elementary school when they were on the same swim team. I met Dave when the Sveen family moved to Wheaton from Minnesota in 1969. We were 12 years old. I remember the moment that I met him for the first time. Somebody brought him into our Sunday school class, and here's this little blonde kid, did not say a word. They introduced him as David Sveen. When Sunday school ended and we all walked into church, he followed me like a puppy dog. He had no idea where to go. So I hear this kid, Dave Sveen from Minnesota, and he doesn't say a word. I think he speaks Swedish. So actually, the new kid here is Bill, who started dating Sandy when you were at University of Illinois. How old were you?
18.
So that would have been like 1975. So Bill was still on probation.
Okay. I mean, he always does look like the newbie.
We have only known Bill for 50 years, and we'll see if it looks like the marriage is probably going to work out.
Okay, well, that's good. And he's still on probation in terms of working together.
You know, this is 50 years. This might be the year. This might be the year.
Excellent. So how did you start working together then? Because this was kind of a friendship that started first. And you guys were all hanging out at some point. I guess Bill joined when you were in your, college years.
Because if I remember, it's a banker, a teacher, and it's like a candlestick maker, a banker, a teacher, and a tech guy. Is it IT or tech? Tech, yeah. I've learned there's a difference.
So very different people and personalities, and yet you're still hanging out together.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember in all this conversation, particularly going back to the values about being relationship driven, is we are very different. I mean, we really are. We're not friends because we share anything in common. As I always say, we share our lives, we don't share our wives. Can you edit that out? Sorry.
Yeah. Zachary will take care of that.
Okay. I just thought it was kind of a sense of humor. I just wanted to be funny, but usually it doesn't work very well for me. It works well for him.
Just don't sing.
No, so we're just different. We have different interests. We have different ways in which we see the world. And the beauty of it, though, is that we have these common core values that we are all committed to. And we also actually have a common vision. And the story gets a little complicated to kind of get to the weeds of it all. But basically, in terms of the summer program that we work together and working together, we have this common vision to help people do what God's called them to do. And over the years, we've tried to define sort of our mission or our vision in different words. And we've used bigger paragraphs, bigger words. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing. The one thing that brought the three of us together was this idea that God has uniquely gifted us. Not one is more important than the other. And that if we could use those gifts together for the purpose of helping people do what God has called them to, that would be our sort of main objective. And I tell the story that when I was growing up as a grade schooler in Minnesota, all my friends had fathers or grandfathers that were war heroes. They had just come back from World War II, and it seemed like every kid in my class father had a story of done something heroic during World War II. And so I remember going home one night and asking my father, what did your dad do in the war? Was he a hero? Was he at Iwo Jima or Guadalcanal? Or was he at the Battle of the Bulge? And my dad looked at me and he said, he was a cook.
That's right.
Very important.
Well, it took me decades to understand why that was important. But basically, when my grandfather was in the Navy and a ship in the South Pacific and was at all major battles, and his job was to scramble eggs, feed the Marines, so they could storm the beach.
Yeah.
And then when they came off the beach, some obviously not living, others, fairly shot up or whatever. And he would feed them, he would sort of debrief what that experience was like. So I came to believe that essentially what we do, if you really kind of distill it down into the essence, we scramble eggs. We're the cooks in the bowels of a ship. We're just scrambling eggs so that you all, our audience, can actually do what God's called you to do. Because you're on the front lines. You're the Marine that's storming the beach to make the world a better place. That's not what we do. We don't take risk. We just scramble eggs. And if we do it well, you do your job well. If we don't do it well, you know what? The work doesn't advance.
Hey, thank you so much.
I want to ask all of you, how did the eggs taste? Yeah, right? Hey. So is there a time, Kurt, go ahead.
Well, the question about how this started.
Yeah.
So these three couples have gone to church together, since we all finished college, which was in 1978. So the three of us are all the same age. We were all born in 1956, all graduated from college in 1978, went to the same church for years, raised our families together, small groups together. An interesting sidelight is that in some ways the catalyst for what eventually developed started with tragedy, which was that Bill was diagnosed with kidney cancer in 1988. We were all 32 years old, and the prognosis was very bad. And they had three preschool kids. Sveens at the time had 3 preschool kids. They weren't done yet. But in God's grace, they were able to remove a kidney and the cancer was healed. But the reason I say that was a catalyst is it gets 32-year-old guys thinking about what really matters and about the fact that we're mortal. And Dave in particular, as he processed that, ended up taking a leave of absence and ultimately leaving his job in investment banking to do a master's at Wheaton. Started in 1992. And when he did that, I was teaching high school. And I said, I can't leave my job to do a master's degree, but I want to learn all the things that you're learning. So let's have breakfast every Wednesday morning at 6. So starting in 1992, it started with just Dave and I, but over the years, lots of people joined us, including the aforementioned Don Church and a lot of others that have been a huge part of this program, and a lot of internationals that were either studying at Wheaton College or passing through, like Pavel Rouse, who's in this room somewhere. But I mentioned that backstory because it was really the commitment to meet together regularly and to share our lives at a deep level and to talk about, mortality and about how things are going in our family and raising kids and at church and all of that kind of stuff that created the soil from which a number of different things grew.
And what was that like for you, Bill? So
Yeah.
32, they're meeting for breakfast and you're having surgery.
Surgery. And so for me, there was a couple of things going on. God had used it to show me that, you know what, I thought I was in control. At that point, I had started a software company, and we were doing quite well. We're going and everything, and it felt like, yeah, this is the life. And then you find out that you have cancer, and you got 3 young kids, and you feel like, oh no, are you even going to get to see them go to school or graduate or whatever? And so that surgery required 6 to 8 weeks of recovery. And at that point, I was trying to shortcut things. So I'd read pastors, I'd read authors and say, this is the way life ought to be, and try to follow it. And God really said, no, just put all that away and just read through the Bible. And so spending that 4 to 6 weeks of just reading and understanding who God was and the pattern and the type of life he would like for people, just really went deep. And it was, really impactful going forwards.
So, we all have heard stories of someone coming across especially a significant challenge. Having kidney cancer is a significant challenge. In 1988, the probability of survival of kidney cancer was 30%. So Bill tells me on the phone one day, he's got kidney cancer. I had blood in my urine, I got a kidney cancer, and I got a 30% chance of survival. That's someone whose glass is half full. What I heard him say is, I got a 70% chance I'm going to die. And it was stunning to me. To be 32 years old, 3 small children, successful software company, wasn't going to be around. And so you look at this and you say, what was God's plan in 1988 when a 32-year-old young man with a great business and a young family was going to be taken? But I can say this with absolute confidence. If he doesn't get kidney cancer, none of you are here today. None of you. Nothing happens if it weren't for that. As horrible as that was. So as you look at your life today, and you look at some of the tragedies that you've experienced, don't minimize the significance of that. We didn't actually start working together until 2001. So 13 years went by before that what was really tragic, and he's got one less kidney than the rest of us. Took 13 years for things to sort of
Kurt's just checking out his body to see where the yeah.
But it's incredible when I see all you here, and I think of the 360 people who go into the summer program and some other things we've been involved with, that none of that happens if we don't have tragedy.
And I guess from my perspective, if you go forward to the 13 years, none of it also happens if we're all not willing to let go of something that was really our life before that, and kind of step into a space that we didn't know what it was going to be like, and kind of just sit there for a while to see what unfolds.
So maybe you can walk us through what was the first trip to Central. So how do we go from that? How do we go from 32 years old, questioning like what does this all mean? What are we doing? How do we live in the face of tragedy, to traveling to Central and Eastern Europe? How can you make the bridge for us, Kurt?
So first I need to warn you that I spent the first 22 years of my allegedly adult life as a history teacher.
All right. So just lean back, relax. We're going to have a history lesson.
You know what? I find myself fascinating.
And it sounds like five other people.
The answer really starts with a person, and it's Don Church. And Don Church had started bringing track teams behind the Iron Curtain in the 1970s, continued in the 80s. And when communism collapsed, friends that he had met behind the Iron Curtain, he stayed in touch with. And so, as you mentioned earlier in the introduction, I think God gave Don the vision to do what he could to support the body of Christ in newly free Central and Eastern Europe. And is that feedback?
No, it's
Oh,
yeah.
No.
It's the air conditioning.
But one of the things that he heard from his pastor friends in post-communist Europe was pastors in the communist world didn't have any formal theological training because there were no Bible schools, there were no seminaries, and there was a vision to start doing theological education. But that means that you need to have professors, which means that you have to have people from your countries go through, do an MA, do a PhD. But if you lived in most of the countries represented here, especially if you were an evangelical, where are you going to do your research? And so the genesis of this Eastern European Summer Study Program was, Wheaton's got a great library. There are faculty available in the summer. Europeans can come to Wheaton, spend 6 weeks, work on their dissertation. So starting in 1995, we started bringing people over every summer. We ended up sort of settling at around a dozen people as a good number. But Dave and I got involved in that program right from the very beginning in 1995. I was teaching high school, so mostly what I did, I'm not a theologian, I'm not a scholar, but I have a car. So I picked people up. I picked people up at the airport, and we would go to a different church every Sunday, and I would drive them. But God used those relationships that we began to build with people in post-communist Europe to pull our hearts in this direction. The first trip we actually did to this part of the world was in 1993, and it was Dave and I who brought an American football team to do a series of exhibition games in Kaliningrad, Russia, in Riga, Latvia, and in Minsk in Belarus. Arguably the dumbest thing we've ever done.
Perchance, what made it dumb?
You know, if somebody had gotten badly hurt, we would have just had to get a gun and put them down.
Oh wow!
Okay, yeah.
I'm sure the parents love to hear that.
Should I tell them the Kaliningrad story? So we were actually hosted by the local sports ministry in Kaliningrad, which had just been opened up to the West. I mean, we were there within the first month that Westerners could go there because it had been a major naval center. And so we get there like at 4 a.m, and we're dead tired. It's us and this bunch of football guys. And so they bring us to the hotel that we're going to stay in, and we groggily stumble in, and there are like 12 beds in a room, and we just fall asleep. And we are awakened by the roaring of a lion, and we found out that the hotel was directly across the street from the Kaliningrad Zoo, and the lion's cage was right outside our window. But when we wake up, we realize these beds they were straw. They were straw mattresses and filthy. And then we go to use the washroom, and there were no toilet seats, and there were no lights in the shower, and there was 6 inches of standing water in the group shower. Dave got a foot fungus, which it took him 25 years to get rid of.
Just went away.
And then we wander downstairs, and we're looking around, and it's interesting. It's mostly women in this hotel, and they're dressed pretty provocatively.
And it's the whole football team.
And we come to realize that the hotel that we were staying in was a how shall I say this? A house of ill repute.
So wait. So David Sveen got an infection in Russia at a house of ill repute. Is that what I hear you saying?
And this was trip number 1. And yeah.
So we could go on with these gentlemen and all their stories.
I've got more.
I know.
We know. Well, and
Christy's encouraging you. Tell another story.
And so this was the first one, and were you continuing to go every year at this point?
Yeah, so what happened was we had this, so communism had come to an end, Russia was just opening up, Kaliningrad was a major naval base for the Russian military, and we thought this was a great idea. But it was because we thought it was a great idea. And it took us a long time to learn this, but we needed to shift the way we thought about ideas. So in 1995, we were having breakfast on a Wednesday morning with Don Church. Remember, we started this breakfast in 1992. And Don said, hey, I know this guy who works for Swiss Air. He's got some free tickets. I think we should go to Europe. And I think we should go see some of the people that I used to work with. And let's see what we can do to help them. And I'm thinking, okay, so we'll go to
the next mic.
We'll go to Romania, Hungary, and we'll pass out tracts. We'll preach at a church service. We'll share the gospel. And Don said, no, we're not going to do those kind of things. We're just going to go and kind of hang out. He said, okay, so what are we going to do? Okay. And literally the next thing I knew, we were on an airplane flying on Swiss Air, and we went to Budapest, right?
Flew into Budapest, and then went to Oradea, and then through Bratislava to Banska Bystrica to visit Donna and Pavel Hannes, and we slept on their floor that night. And then we drove to when I say sleep, I mean we lay on their floor that night. We did not sleep.
So there's a lot of apologies coming towards you for that.
And then we drove to Prague, where we met Pavel Czerny and Karl Teschner, and all of those folks were in the summer program.
And it was on that trip in the fall of 1995 that we began to realize that this thing was not about us. And it was kind of stunning, because we always think it's about us, right? Because we're so important. And to watch Don interact with these friends he'd had for many years in a way that was service oriented, like how can I help you? How can I help you do what God's called you to do? It was a whole new paradigm for us. Because we were so, he's a high school teacher. I was an investment banker. We're used to telling people what they should do. And to change the posture and say, what can we do to help you do what God's called you to do? It was a paradigm shift that I don't think we would have ever learned without learning it from Don Church.
And just to sort of second that, I mean, you get me started talking about Don Church, I could go all night. But one of the things that we realized from Don, one was the methodology that you mentioned earlier, which is, when you get with people, and he wouldn't ask these questions in sequence or as a formula. It was just who he was. But he wanted to know how your soul was. How's your walk with Christ? And what do you need? And how can I help? And they were genuine questions. And by the way, Don didn't have any money. Don was severely dyslexic and could barely read. So what he was offering was not silver or gold or this vast array of intellectual gifts. He was offering his friendship and the friends, the connections that he had in Wheaton. And one of the things that I realized, and I say this probably way too often now, but one of the most undervalued gifts in the kingdom is the gift of encouragement. And Don Church had the gift of encouragement, and he used it faithfully. And that little mustard seed kind of gift has flourished in ways that we just don't understand this side of heaven.
That is a great transition, because we'd like to talk to some of the encouragers that are part of your family that were also part of this. So we have kind of a limited amount of time to finish up, and we really thought it was important to also hear from your wives who've been involved with this from the beginning. And you guys started out with the traveling, and your wives have been big supporters of all that you've been doing, although I'm really interested to hear how you thought that first trip to Russia was a good idea. So we're going to do a quick switch here, and we're going to talk to David Kriste Sveen together, and then we'll hear from each of the women who've also played a big part and really have such deep and enduring relationships with a lot of the people in the room. We just think it's a beautiful thing. So I know it's not their favorite thing to do, to come up and talk in front of the group, but we'd love to hear what you thought of all of this, Kriste, at the very beginning. And I know Kriste as an artist and somebody who shares her gifts really beautifully with our church and the community. But we know that you've played a part in all of these relationships. So tell us how you thought this was all going to go down when they first started taking trips to
when they
Russia.
went with the football team to Russia, and your husband comes back with foot fungus.
Right. I don't think, looking back, when we look back 30 years, there's just no way we could have ever imagined that this would have happened like this. I think all of you would probably agree that the adventure God has taken you on, you could have never dreamed up yourself. And that is how we started, is one day at a time. I mean, we were intentional parents. Our first trip overseas was before that Russia trip, because in our church small group, we had friends who were missionaries who were studying at Wheaton, and then they were deployed to France. So that was our first trip. The Skoweras and us went over to visit them. And after that, it was intentionally trying to bring our children one-on-one periodically to see what God was doing in the world. And that was our intention. And then as this program began to unfold, we started meeting all of you, and God started bringing the world to us. And so having these amazing people, the opportunity to meet these amazing people that have had amazing experiences that we never had, and to introduce them to our children, to give our children a more of a world view, and not just in the history books, but actually to hear some of the experiences that these heroes and saints, I call them, had to go through was a gift to God, to our family. And that was our intentional parenting, to give them a different perspective than the world that they were living in Wheaton. So we were grateful to God for that.
It's amazing.
So you know what I do for a living, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask and this is a podcast about relationships and life transitions. How has the involvement in ESSP with all of these heroes and saints that we have in the room and that aren't here, how has that impacted you and your relationship, both of you?
I think for me, it's grown, our relationship, because it's bigger. As David said earlier, it's not about us. I think we learn that, we're living in such a egocentric society right now, but it really is not about us. And we're given this small window to play a role in God's kingdom. And I think if we keep our eyes on what is God doing, and that I think has always been part of our relationship, is what is God doing and how can we help and how can we be involved in what God is doing, and trying to teach that to our children.
Yeah,
So-
that's one thing we've appreciated about you guys, that we've learned from you, really, is that big world perspective, just stepping back anytime out of our own little bubble and the things that feel important and big and hard to us. We can really change that by stepping back and looking at a really bigger picture of the story God's weaving in the entire world, and it makes our stuff seem a little smaller and a little less important, and really gives us a bigger heart for the people around us.
And I
so,
think
yeah.
for you and I, of the model, the relational model that you've given us in terms of how to involve each other in ministry, how to involve our kids, because it's generational from your dad to you to your kids. There's a commitment to showing up. So the integrity and the consistency isn't just the two of you, but it's this multi-generational thing that speaks deeply to us and challenges us, because it can be easily for, I'm going to go on a trip, or Tara's going to go on a trip, but to really craft it as an intergenerational thing is motivating for us.
And this gets back, yes, exactly. And this gets back to when the importance of being able to articulate your values. Again, one of those values that I mentioned was this idea of living a seamless life. And when you involve your spouse or your children or your parents, and now we are starting to have grandchildren, in what you're doing, you better live seamlessly, or you're going to not only mess up your marriage, but you'll mess up generations.
Yeah, your kids will call you out real fast.
They will call you out very quickly. And so,
Yeah.
It's the decision for us to be involved in things together was a value statement, right? It was consistent with the way we saw the world, what was most important to us. And we always have something to talk about,
Yeah.
So we never run out of topic. It's never quiet between us. But the other thing I would say is that we've all had rough parts of life, right? We have these moments, sometimes seasons of difficulty, and there were so many times I would come home and tell Christy it would be a particularly difficult situation, whatever. I said, I was talking to Pavel, or I was talking to Pavel, or by the way,
Everybody's named
Pavel. Yeah, it seemed like in Czech, if I was walking down the streets of Prague and said Pavel, the population would turn around. But I'd say I was talking to Pavel, and here's what he said about this, and it applies exactly to what we're challenged with today, and it happened all the time. And you just can't put a statistical probability that you all could care for us in such a profound way at moments when we needed it.
Yeah. I don't know how to ask this question in the right way, so I'm going to ask it in the wrong way. How is it beneficial? So I think about, I travel with Dave or I travel with Bill, and it's different with two guys traveling. How is it traveling as a couple, or how does your female voice hit the ministry differently than just a male voice? Not just a male voice, but a beautiful male voice. That is David Sveen.
Well, actually, we didn't really start traveling with them as wives for a while. I mean,
Our kids were younger. Obviously,
our
we
kids
didn't
were
get out.
younger and we had other responsibilities, but and I think Meg and Sandy would agree with this, is that we were able to ask or understand different questions of a much wholer picture of the family dynamic of what was going on when we're together. And I think that the women would speak up more, and I would speak up more, and we would find how much we had in common. And I think that helps to build trust in relationships.
Yeah, when we would come over, obviously it was Bill and I, or Kurt, Dave, Jerry Root, and we'd have meetings with people, and it was always the men. I mean, it was rarely women. And we were coming on a trip we were coming home one time, and we were kind of debriefing, and we were saying, there's something that's like just very odd. Something's missing, and it occurred to us that we never brought any, our wives with us, and so we made and we're not that strategic, but every so often we come up with a good idea, and we said, you know what, we need to start bringing our wives, and it was Sandy who had a little more flexibility in her schedule than Meg and Kriste. And I'm telling you, the first trip that she went with us changed everything. I'll let them talk about it. We don't need to spend any time on it, but it did fundamentally change the way in which we interacted with our friends here in Europe.
Yeah.
So that's a good segue to Kurt and Meg. Is that okay with you,
Yes.
Kriste?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, and you've all heard from Kurt, and he is a gifted storyteller. We know that about Kurt. And Meg is a skilled teacher who has a really big heart, and she's a really hard worker who does a lot for this summer program. And I can see the joy she gets from it every summer. She can't wait till they come into town, and she's just alive when they're all there with the fun of being, part of everything they're doing. And we love that about you. So thank you, Meg. You have a question for them?
I do. So how have all these people affected your life? So
Whoa, wow, small question.
you can blame Tara for that, because I wasn't quite ready to ask the question. So I'm going to ask this one because I know you, and you give of your heart, and your heart is affected by the relationship. And I'm just kind of curious of the give and take that you've had with the summer program participants. How have you been affected by them?
Growing up, I never expected to leave the country, let alone have friends in Europe. And I have been so amazed that people can come for 6 weeks and I can become deep friends with people in 6 weeks. And that doesn't happen to me in the United States. I don't make deep friendships in 6 weeks at home. But there is something special about people that I don't know coming, and we pick them up at the airport and settle them into apartments and then get to know them and then have them around the table. We love having conversations in our backyard together, and just hearing stories of what God has done. And it makes my image of God so much bigger because of that. So I'm the one that's blessed by it. And then when you started coming in to Malenovice this week, I was so excited. I was sitting waiting for you all to come because I couldn't wait to see you walk through the door and welcome you. And that's how deep it goes. And that just has been such a surprise to me.
So when did you transition into travel? So you've been doing a lot of the summer program and hosting it in your home and equipping the apartments and kind of providing that. But I'm curious of when you started, because being a full-time teacher, there's not a lot of time to travel. And so when
it was in the summers, and it was really coming here for the reunion, the first reunion conference.
when was that?
2001, you said? Yeah, 2001, when this building was opened
Yeah.
for the first time?
But we had actually been here with the Sveens and seen this building when it was not beautiful.
I know we heard there was like coal.
And it was boarded up and gray, and it was so much fun to see it that way and to hear Dave Patty have this grand idea of this is what it looks like now, but it could be something different. And now we're here, and it is a beautiful place. And there's so many special things that have happened here. And I'll tell you one, and it was the first reunion story. And we were sitting in this room that we're in tonight. And this room is kind of circular, and it's white. And the windows have like a cross-like pattern in them. And there were no curtains at that time because it was brand new. Yeah. And we were worshiping. It was, I think, our last worship service. And it was in the afternoon, and there was light streaming in the windows. And we're singing worship songs. And I'm looking around. And as the light is shadowing around, we were surrounded by light and crosses because of the windows. And we're singing in English. And I thought, all these people are singing my language. And I just felt like that was wrong. And I started crying. And there was a Romanian here, Benny Farragow. And he saw my tears. And afterwards, was like, why are you crying? And I said, it's so unfair. It's so unfair that you all come here and you're speaking our language for us. And he told me it wasn't, that he really needed to learn English. That's where all the resources were. But to me, it still felt wrong. And so God did something in my heart that night. It gave me this little glimpse of what heaven's going to be like. And so when we gather here, I think of that all the time, that this is a little glimpse of what heaven might be like, where we all can understand each other clearly and sing together and worship him. So this is a special place, and you are all very special people to me.
So, Kurt, how is your life better with Meg in partnership in ministry?
Okay, let me read what she wrote. So I'll answer that question.
Yeah, but answer the one you want to first.
I'll set it up.
Okay.
So we've talked about how influential Don Church was in terms of our methodology and our values. A second person that's been really important in our lives is Dr. Dwayne Elmer, who was he was Dave's teacher in grad school at Wheaton, and then he was Dave's advisor in his PhD program at Trinity. He's a professor of education. But what Dwayne did was he gave us words and categories to describe what Don Church sort of intuited in how he operated. And one of the things that I got from Dwayne was his description of Christian education. He said, it's the art of creating an environment in which Christ-centered learning community can thrive. And that phrase has sort of been the basis for what we have been trying to do for most of these years. So the first time we did a reunion conference in 2001, when people came to Wheaton, almost all of them came as individuals. The spouses didn't come. And so we got to know them as individual people. But we thought, you know what? If we do a reunion, we should invite everybody's spouses, because when your spouse is there, you can't get away with as much. You have to be
That's right.
you have to be more authentic because there's somebody sitting next to you that knows the truth.
Fact checking you.
And so it did. If that's the art of creating an environment, you're creating an entirely different environment. And so then having the spouses travel with us periodically was a way to extend that beyond just the reunion. And I'll give you one other example of sort of that principle. For years, we used to start in the first couple of weeks of the summer program, we would invite every participant to tell their stories. And we did it in a interior classroom in the Billy Graham Center. Billy Graham Center is lovely. The classrooms are great, but they're not exactly an ambiance that invites authenticity. And about the time that Meg retired from full-time teaching, maybe a little bit before, we said, you know what, the whole dynamic would change if we could do this at our house, or if we could do it on our screen porch. And so we began to move a lot more of the community building aspect of the summer program to our home, either in our backyard or in our house. And again, it's paying attention to create an environment. And so we started talking about the idea that what we're really trying to do is just invite 12 people into our family for 6 weeks. Yeah. And it sort of accentuates the relational development. But it's also been really the first time that we have done ministry together as a couple in our married lives. And so that has enriched our marriage and hopefully has contributed to the program.
I can't imagine the program without your hospitality. We've only known it that way, and your home is such a central part to that. So we've learned a lot from that too.
And I think just a thank you, because that integrity part of you have invited us all into your home in the good times, like when Tara and I always are like, let's quick clean up for everybody when company comes over. But you've also invited people in the messy time when the dishes are on the table, metaphorically and actually. And so I think that piece, well, not their house, our house, but your intentionality of not dressing it up, and it's just like, this is real life and you're welcome in, frees us up all to be open and vulnerable too. So thank you for that as a couple.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. All right. So we've got Bill and Sandy Skowera, and we think of Bill and Sandy together as one of the best listening teams you could ever sit with. Don't make that face. You really are. It's really a joy to sit with these two, because they really ask amazing questions and are great listeners. And Sandy, I see you working so hard when we're together traveling. She's got an eye for detail. So do you have a starting question for Bill and Sandy?
Sandy has a story that I want to hear. And you were saying you were hoping Meg wouldn't steal your story.
Oh, it's not a story.
It's not a story? Okay. Oh, I thought it was a story.
No, it's just how the impact of being with people in this summer program has been on my life. And I think that the biggest thing is that it has opened my eyes to see how big God is. One of the first trips I made over here was to this place, and it was to a Josiah Venture Conference. And we were all in this room gathering and worshiping, and I was just awestruck, because I thought, I'm in a room just like as with all of you right now, with the next generation of, look how many Billy Grahams. And it was going through my head, and I'm like, what is God about to do? And it just made my head explode. It was just amazing.
With that, being overwhelmed by the beauty and the potential of what you're seeing God doing in and through lives, how do you guys reflect on your own relationship of what's God doing in and through you in this ministry to Central and Eastern Europe, the summer program? You're good at seeing outward. How do you see God using this, transforming your relationship together, your ministry together? I know Bill hates these surprise questions. This was not on the list.
A little bit of background to this. So when I was in the software business, it was a business that required extreme amounts of travel. I was away a lot. We had basically different worlds. I worked in this world. She was at home. And while we would try to talk about those things, they would be totally different, different worlds and things like that. And, along with the summer program, one of the things that started in 2002 was this company to help people get their back office taken care of. And one of our first employees was Sandy. So that put us...
You hired well.
I absolutely did. What it introduced into the relationship, though, was the ability to work together. That part was okay.
Yeah, we need to ask you some things. Yeah.
So, but what it also introduced was this idea that, you leave the morning, you wake up, you maybe have this little argument. It doesn't stay at home. It kind of follows you into the office. and you come home and you had this rough issue at work, and it comes home with you, So we had to work through that. And that took a little bit of time to figure out how we were going to deal with those things that could flow into the other environments. But once we've gotten through that, there is nothing better than working together.
So what did you guys do to set So it's boundaries, right? Boundaries between home life, boundaries between work life, working
No
together.
boundaries.
No boundaries.
No boundaries?
I think the
We
word
can
is
still
everything was the same.
We could still wake up at 6 a.m. and say, oh, I know how to fix that in QuickBooks.
Wow, that's exciting morning talk.
No, it was that we were actually able to speak the same language. It wasn't a boundary issue.
Okay.
It was that we understood that, okay, this is a home thing. That's okay when, and maybe it doesn't get solved when we go on to work, but we're not going to talk about it at work. So in that sense, a boundary, but not hard boundaries.
Because I think it's probably a challenge for many in ministry that there's not a separation between when your home life, ministry life, work life, it all kind of bleeds together. Right. And being able to navigate that well together is a superpower that we would all like to learn from you. As you do this work, how do you see it impacting your spiritual life? Like, how has seeing Bill shift from his software company to Cedarstone and ministry in Central and Eastern Europe, how has that affected your spiritual life together and individually?
Well, before he went to Cedarstone, we had the experience some years earlier of starting a new business and missing paychecks because they couldn't afford to pay us. And through all that time, and of course, Bill's illness, through all those things, God was asking me, can you trust me? Can you trust me with your finances? Can you trust me with your husband's life? And just working with me, can you trust me? And so I think that even coming here, the first time I came to the Czech Republic I was anxious because I'd never been to a country where I couldn't at least speak a little bit of the language. And so I had anxiety about that because of loss of control. But yeah.
So how did that kind of risky feeling kind of affect and shape you when you leaned into that?
Now it's become couples therapy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, no, when
this is about Sandy, because you're really comfortable here now.
Well, as soon as, there comes a point in your life, and I think I learned this when Bill got sick. You say you believe God. You say you have faith. And then something really scary happens, and you got to go, was I lying? Or did I mean it?
Yeah.
And I came down on the side of, I meant it. So although I had anxiety, I drove myself crazy trying to read all the signs in Czech and make sense of them, and it wasn't working. But you just let go.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, just be patient. Just follow what you're supposed to do. Learn what's courteous in the culture. Learn what's not courteous in the culture, and just keep moving on.
So last word, Bill. This rarely happens. You get the last word of
Last word.
20, 30, let's say there's a 32-year-old out there hearing about business kind of cranking, the focus on making a buck and being successful, being significant, being relevant, seeking power, seeking money. And then crisis happens. How do you, from your own experience learning that, what would you coach them up in this moment or in the future moments?
I think the biggest thing, the first step was, when you're 20, late 20s, early 30s, you just think everything you're going to do is be perfect, and that there's nothing going to be wrong with life. That's, it's the stage of life. And I think two things for me. One is something will come, and then you, as Sandy said, have to make a decision. That burden, is it going to push you towards Christ, or is it going to be the barrier to Christ? And I think you don't know that, or you can't really get through that unless you're in community.
Yeah.
And it's very tempting when you're building a software company or anything to not be in community because you don't have the time, you think. And so I would highly recommend being in community, either as a couple or individually, so you're prepared for those types of things.
Well, and we're thankful for the community that you've created here, the reunion, the summer program, how you've shared, all 6 of you have shared your lives to continue that community that's Christ-focused, servant-focused, consistent, and we don't change in the different contexts, whether we're on a podcast or having a pint. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josiah.
Well, we might have to do a live show again. This is kind of fun.
Yeah, it has been fun. We got to hear stories we hadn't heard before, and we're really thankful you were willing to share about your experiences. So we also have a few things to share we asked the participants who are here tonight to maybe give us some words about what this program has meant to them. And we obviously can't read, 100 or 360 of those, but we have a few just things to share about what this program has meant and what it's done in the lives of some of the people who've attended. And we'll just read a few to close us out and just to remind us why we're all here and what can happen in the future when this kind of community happens and this kind of collaboration. That's really one of the beautiful things. Like Meg said, it feels like a taste of heaven when you see people from so many places with so many differences and different languages coming together with the same heart and really loving each other. There's just so much love and connection in this room. So I'll read one from Nikolay in Bulgaria. He said, during my time...
Wait a second. From Bulgaria.
Oh!
just want to make sure you haven't fallen asleep.
He said, during my time at the program, I was able to finish my 2 courses, training. I probably should have brought my reading glasses up here. That's the HIM. Manuals, training, leaders for ministry, and managing church and organizations. We established European Leadership Forum and registered officially by the government of Bulgaria. So thanks and God bless you.
Hey, and maybe I should read one.
Yeah, maybe you should.
This is from someone from Poland.
Someone from Poland.
Personally, it showed how I can enrich international community of believers, back to that idea of community. Professionally, the ESSP program helped me get deeper into my interests and specifically the gifts of the Holy Spirit. And spiritually, it helped me conform my identity in Christ. Here's one from Czechia. I really valued the relationships within our group, the opportunity of sharing not only our professional expertise, but our life stories together and our faith experiences together was such a valuable experience for me. Thank you to you 6 for your openness, your authenticity, your dedication, and your serving heart. I think we'll just end on that. We're thankful for your serving heart. We're thankful for ESPP or ESSP, for the 360 alum and the future alum, that we are a community that get to actually live out this Christ-focused servant leadership, consistency in all aspects of our life, and we can confront and challenge and support each other in that. So thank you for being here tonight, and now let's go do some more fellowship.
Thank you.